So welcome to assignment number 4, which is a lit review, and it's worth 15% of your final grade. And this assignment is due on Sunday of week 3. So I just want to go over this assignment. So what you would do is in week 1 of the course, you will sign up for a type of trauma that you're interested in. For example, domestic violence, war, a natural calamity. So the type of trauma is one aspect, and I will group you into dyads or triads depending on your choices. Now in this assignment, you will get to choose a population affected by the trauma. For example, your group may have chosen domestic violence as the type of trauma, but you can choose what population you want to address. For example, you may choose to focus on children who are victims of domestic violence, while your partner may choose to focus on, the adults in the relationship, in the domestic violence situation. So one is the kind of trauma, and the second is the population that is impacted by this trauma. The lit review of populations and types of trauma will be completed by each individual student. So each one of you is going to review 2 papers. Okay? One is going to be on the population, and the second is going to be on the type of trauma. And when you are coming together as a triad or dyad, then you will pool in your resources and have maybe 4 or 6 papers, depending on your group, that you will integrate into your presentation. So the first step is you have to pick out 2 papers from the Widener library. One is going to be on the type of trauma, and the other is going to be on the population that is impacted by the trauma. All papers have to be published within the last 10 years, at least 10 pages long, and should come from scholarly peer-reviewed journals. So maybe, even though New York Times, I think, has some wonderful articles, we can't use them, or things that you might find in Psychology Today, etc. Even though they're really good sometimes, they're not suitable for this exercise. So you will find these 2 articles, and you will upload them in week 2 for my approval. So once I receive these articles, I will send you an email saying they've been approved. Okay, that's step 1. Step 2 is that you would write a 1,000 to 1,500 word integrated lit review of the material. Now what literature review means is you will take both these papers and you will follow these points. My suggestion would be to create headings so that you don't lose out on any question that have been asked. So you would summarize the main points of the articles in your own words. So for example, if you're working with veterans and your population are young veterans who are returning to college, and how does that impact them? How does their PTSD get in the way of education and rehabilitation? So you would give the main points that, this is what happens in war, and this is what happens when they come home, and this is how we can help them. Then you would synthesize the material from different articles and chapters where they overlap. So remember, you're working with at least 2 papers. So you're going to be presenting an integrated version of these 2 papers. You will take important information from both and then present it. You will also be integrating the Rothschild reading into this assignment. And believe me, it's not difficult to do that because Rothschild is applicable to pretty much everything. So at least 4 citations from Rothschild. Implications of this type of trauma in social work. Often there's trauma that we do not notice. There's vicarious traumatization. How are you going to bring in person in environment? What is what would happen if traumatized children go to school and then return to neighborhoods where trauma is still prevalent? How will this impact the child and impact the work that we do with them? So this is where your critical thinking is going to come in. Okay, and this is a really key area that I look forward to reading. A discussion of what you learned and how you are going to apply the material. Okay, so please be sure to use citations and references, and you are required to paraphrase, and absolutely no direct quotes is how I would go. You can use maybe one or two, but typically direct quotes are discouraged. Okay. So there must be a title page, in-text citations, and a reference page. And here are, it's out of 15 points. So the maximum points are 2. This is where you get 1 point. The type of trauma chosen and a description are included in the introduction. So this is an easy 1 point to get. Main points of the literature were summarized in your own words, and citations were used where needed. Literature was synthesized. There was an overlap of ideas between articles and chapters. So if both your articles are talking about trauma during the war, you can present it in just a sentence or two and say, like, both articles talk about this. So at least 4 Rothschild citations. Implications for addressing this type of trauma in social work were explained. Students were described what was learned from the articles. So did you learn that a returning veteran's memory is impacted, and what are some of the ways that we could work around it? So what is it, what is something new that you learned from these articles? Also, how do you plan to apply this into your practice, present and or future? And then again, this APA style formatting is absolutely key. So this is an assignment. The Lit Review assignment is worth 15% off your final grade.